Welcome to Sales and Marketing Talk Show. Today we are talking about B2B SaaS growth, and I'm here with Edward Ford, Marketing Director of Supermetrics. And Supermetrics is actually a SaaS product that brings all your marketing metrics into one place, and they've been growing very rapidly in the last year. So I think there's a lot to learn for us. I think, if I remember correctly, you have more than 400,000 users for your product in more than 120 countries. So a lot to learn here. Thanks for joining, Edward. And how does it feel to be like a guest in a podcast, since normally you are interviewing people?
Yes, Emily, thanks for having me. Great to be here. It's quite different. It's quite weird. I'm so used to being in your position and being on the other side of the table asking the questions. So it's actually very strange to be answering them for a change, but I'll try my best, see what we can do.
Great. And actually, a thing that I would love to start here today, there are like many different kind of organization, and the role of marketing is so different in like different kind of organizations. So could you open up us a little bit, like what is the role of marketing in Supermetrics and in your growth and in your like customer acquisition and so on?
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think especially in SaaS, marketing can mean many different things when you have the whole customer life cycle and so forth. But I guess at the end of the day, it's really about growth and helping the company grow, and how we do that and look at that is through different ways. So of course, building awareness of Supermetrics, our solutions, communicating the value that we bring, the pain points that we solve, communicating the why behind why we exist, and so forth. And really what we're looking at in marketing is acquisition. So that's our number one focus. So new user and new customer acquisition, and ultimately growing revenue through that. And we have two funnels. So we have our self-serve funnel and the sales assisted funnel. So when or just before I joined, it was pretty much fully self-serve driven, the Supermetrics growth. And the first salesperson joined maybe 6 months before I joined. So the whole sales assisted funnel was something quite new. Many SaaS companies go the other way around. So it's still very much about driving growth through our self-serve funnel, but also making sure we can support our sales assisted funnel, bringing on the opportunities that they can work, supporting them through sales enablement and so forth. So it's changed a bit how we think and work as a marketing team. And I think as well, marketing is balancing between strategic and operational activities. So I think having a good strategy and thinking about how you're approaching the challenges and just thinking about things beforehand makes your job a bit easier, and it ties everything together, understanding who you're going after, how you're going to go after them, the best ways to reach certain people, comparing yourself to other alternatives out there, direct competitors, indirect competitors. So thinking that about that part, but then also the actual operational execution. So doing things, getting stuff shipped on a weekly basis, whether it's new product announcements or if it's some top of funnel content, a webinar, something like this, a LinkedIn Live these days. So that balance. And one way I like to think about that is low intent versus high intent. So you have something like a podcast. So we just recently launched the Marketing Analytics Show. So Supermetrics, a lot of what we talk about is around marketing analytics. That's what our product is enabling in many ways. So if someone goes to listen to the first episode of the Marketing Analytics Show, the chances of them just immediately going to supermetrics.com and purchasing a license is pretty slim. That's a big jump. But then we do have content that is built around more high intent. So if someone's searching about how to move Facebook ads data to Google Sheets, they might find an article or content on Supermetrics, and there the product could be, something very attractive for them, could be very helpful. They might start a trial, and then if they get value from the product, go on and convert into a paying customer. So kind of thinking about ways to reach our audiences through different levels of intent. And at the end of the day, the things we're looking at are trials. So how many new trials are we getting in on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, the conversion rate of those trials, and ultimately how does that translate into revenue, whether it's through the self-serve funnel or the sales assisted funnel.
Great. A lot of interesting stuff there. And actually, like one very interesting thing, I think, as you said, that actually most B2B SaaS companies start the way that they will first do the sales work, and then at some point they will hopefully move to self-service model. But you did it like other way around. What was the like reasoning behind? You already had a model that worked in the self-service model. Why did you like decide to do basically an other kind of sales model in that one as well?
Yeah, well, I think it was also driven by the product strategy, in that the original products you could buy with Supermetrics were very simple. You could figure out how to use them by yourself. Didn't really need any hand holding, and it was the price was relatively low, so it was quite easy for an individual contributor who would be using our product, a marketing manager, a paid acquisition performance marketer, to try out the product, find out, okay, this is quite simple. I can move all my marketing data from different platforms into a spreadsheet. It's this much per month. I can get the credit card done. Whereas when we started building out our data warehousing product, so you could now use Supermetrics to move your marketing data into Google BigQuery or Snowflake. You can use our API. It's a lot more complicated, and there needs to be discussions with people from data teams, technology teams, analytics teams, marketing teams, and that can't happen really through self-serve. So that was for sure one thing that forced that decision. I mean, the decision happened before I joined the company as well, so I kind of have some view on what happened, but that I think was definitely one factor. And I think just being able to provide sales support, because I think some people are quite happy to purchase through a self-serve funnel. They don't want to talk to anyone. They just want to try things out, see what the product does. And if they like it, they'll go on and purchase. But some other people want to speak with someone, get a demo. And as we grew and scaled, that was one very logical next step to make, by adding a sales team on top of the already successful self-serve funnel. Yeah,
exactly. That makes sense. And you already talk like a little bit about like what kind of different content you guys do, like high intent stuff and other things as well. But you could now maybe a little bit open up a little bit more on like your content strategy, and maybe like it would be like super interesting to know. We normally, when like people are thinking about content, I think many companies are actually focusing more on the like top of a funnel stuff and like acquiring new clients. But it would also be interesting to know like what kind of content you are, for example, producing to your current clients as well.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, most of what we're doing in terms of content would be on that acquisition side. I think as a marketing team, that is our main focus, and we are looking at bringing new people in through content. Of course, there's content that we would create that is very relevant for our existing customers, particularly very bottom of funnel product marketing content, new launches and so forth. Like, of course, super important. We're communicating with our existing clients there. And I think with something like the podcast we launched, that is going to appeal to many different audiences, and our existing customers are definitely one of those. So we love to see our customers listening to the podcast and reading some of our articles as well. But I think if we just break down the content strategy, it would really be driven by new user acquisition. And we're also thinking very much along the lines of product-led, with our not just content strategy, but overall marketing strategy. So really building the product into a lot of the things we do and talk about. And we're very much inspired by Ahrefs. I think they've done this really well. So again, it comes back to that high intent search we spoke about. So really it's a search first content strategy about acquiring new visitors to our site and ultimately new users through those search terms, which might not have a huge amount of volume, but the intent there is very high. So a really long tail keyword, like I said earlier, like move Facebook ads data into Google Sheets. And there's several, like many others that we could look to target. And, you know, the volumes aren't super high, but the quality of the traffic is good. And there's a very good fit with our products. There's a high likelihood people would go on to convert, versus something like performance marketing as a keyword, super competitive. Of course, there's a lot of traffic you can get, but we don't know for sure is how relevant all that traffic is. I think there will be a certain slice that might be interested in something, but it's just not aligned with the intent. So that's the short version of what we're thinking in terms of content and a content strategy.
Yeah, great. And you actually used to work in advanced B2B like beforehand, and you work with like many B2B SaaS companies. You have like interviewed many B2B SaaS marketers. When we are like thinking content strategy, should like that be the way that every SaaS company should do the content, or how have you like decided to do content exactly that way and focus on like long key terms and so on?
No, I don't think so. I think there's many different ways you can go, and I think you could even question: do we need content marketing? Is that the right tactic for us? Is it something we want to have as part of our marketing playbook? I think there are probably other ways to go. I think in some form or other you do need content. I guess it depends how you define content. But I think as well, depending on your growth strategy. So if you're a company, let's take Drift, for example, when they launched conversational marketing and this new shift from inbound and gated content, lead forms, nurturing workflows to, hey, real-time chat, conversational marketing, chatbots and so forth, that there it was a lot about educating the market, educating marketers and convincing them that, hey, the way you're doing things now actually doesn't make any sense. And if you think about it from the customer's perspective, is really dumb and it's a very crappy experience. So there was a lot of educating. There was a huge amount of work in category creation. They were very successful by using the Seeking Wisdom podcast. So I don't know how much a role of or how big a role high intent organic acquisition was in their marketing strategy, but at least from my perspective, it was something very different and it worked really well for them. So I think it depends on your overall business, your overall business strategy and your marketing strategy to figure out what kind of plays work with that specific situation. So yeah, I don't think this is the only way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe like one important thing I think in your case as well, when we are thinking about like your acquisition model, is the fact that you have like very strong brand as well, and you are like doing a lot of work for that one. So could you open us up a little bit, like how you see like there is like the new acquisition, but then there's like brand marketing, and do you see those ones as separate units, or is everything towards those two big goals as well? And like what kind of benefits you have had from building a great brand for you guys?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think really building a strong brand makes a lot of other things easier, and it gives you a bit more power. It multiplies a lot of other things you're doing. And I think the challenge with brand or selling the idea of building a strong brand is that it's hard to show on the attribution reports, and it's hard to say, well, it generated this much of revenue. It's very difficult to break it down on that level. But for sure, if you can build a strong brand, whether it's through a great product or whether it's through a movement of building a new category like Drift, that sort of puts wind in your sails as a marketing team, and you're no longer just relying on channels and tactics, which will eventually run out or dry up at some point. So for sure, the two go very much hand in hand. And I think it's, as a marketing team, you need to balance between the two. Like, okay, there's stuff we're going to do that I don't know, is it going to impact stuff immediately, or it might not show up on different reports, but we can say that, or we know quite confidently that this is something we should be doing and it's going to help us achieve our goals. So I think that's been definitely very helpful to us. And I think in terms of like, how do we build that brand and how do we make sure that, you know, it's known and loved by marketers across the globe? I think it's very much driven by the product in our case. So a lot of our growth has been driven through the product, and having very good product market fit. Mikael, our founder, built the product to solve his own problem. And there were many other people who were doing the same job as him who had that same problem. And the timing of him building that product in, goodness knows, 2009, 10 was the original version of Supermetrics. So it must be around 10 years old now. The timing was right, and the company has grown over time. But I think if I think about this, there's probably 5 aspects to it that I could put. The first would be that great product that drives word of mouth. Hey, there's this great tool. people are so proud to be using it. And I think if you think of other products where you love using them, you always want to tell other people about them. And it's sort of, you're proud to be using that product, and that has really helped fuel our growth. So the product itself, which has driven word of mouth, would be one. I think the close relationship with customers, number two. So working closely with them, listening to them, asking them for advice in terms of where we should go on the product roadmap, what integration should we build. That's been very important. And of course, they're our champions, and they're the people who are fueling the word of mouth and telling other people. And then in addition to that, the third point would be our affiliate program. So we have a really, really good affiliate network. Victoria, who heads our affiliate team, has done a phenomenal job to build that up over the last 3-4 years. And it's really extended our marketing team to have a network of affiliates promoting Supermetrics, creating content about the products in their local languages, French, Spanish, German, etc. So it's adding arms to the marketing team, and we're still a relatively small and lean marketing team, but this brings a bit more weight and allows us to do things that we for sure wouldn't be able to do ourselves. Then I think the content, that's also something that's helped drive that. A lot of people enjoy reading our articles, the podcast now, our masterclasses and webinars. And I remember when I spoke with Mikael soon after joining, he spoke about this being one of the real foundations of the growth and of building a strong brand. And then more recently, we've been thinking about the actual brand identity, the voice, the tone, how we want to communicate, looking at other players in our space and thinking, okay, how can we be Supermetrics, be authentic, be real, but also be different? And so if you looked at our website before spring this year, you would have seen something very different to what it looks like now. So I think those are some of the different factors that have helped contribute to this. I think there's probably many more, and we could dig into this even further, but I'll kind of pull out a few different points that I think have really helped us build that brand.
Great points on the brand. And actually one interesting thing that I would like to ask there, since I think there are like many B2B SaaS companies who are like basically growing globally, but they have their like headquarters in some country, and maybe the marketing team as well over there. So like, what kind of marketing team do you have, and like how do you lead teams if you are working in like super many countries as well?
Yeah, we have everyone in marketing centralized in Helsinki. So we have 3 offices. When I started, there was just one office, actually one room, pretty much. We all fitted in the same room, about 30 people. Now we're around 120 across 3 offices. So we have one primarily development office in Vilnius in Lithuania, and then one primarily sales office in Atlanta, serving North America in particular, which is obviously one of our most important markets. So everyone's in the same, or we were in the same space, I guess, before the spring, and then everyone started working from home. But the team is kind of strange in how we're structured. You could break down the wider marketing and business development department into several different squads. So we have what is marketing, like traditional marketing, which is obviously where I'm focusing. Then we have affiliate plus channel sales. So that's our affiliate program plus essentially agency partner program. We have growth, which is operating across the entire customer journey, working on like pricing experiments, onboarding flows, customer marketing, and so forth. And then we have business development, looking at strategic partnerships, potential acquisitions, and so forth. And then within marketing, we have a breakdown of our self-serve products and our enterprise products. So my focus now is focusing more on self-serve. As we're growing, there's a need to make sure we're focusing on specific areas. So that's where I'm focusing and working with the team on that. And then we have other teams and squads within that. So it's an interesting setup, but I think it's also reflective of us as a company in that we don't just have one product. We're actually a SaaS company built of multiple products, or almost 10 at this point. So that kind of adds a bit of complexity to things. But that's the short breakdown of the marketing team.
Okay. Interesting. And then maybe like one thing that I think many people are interested in is really like how to measure marketing. And you shared with us that your basically like main focus is in the like new customer acquisition and in like current role in the basic like no touch sales model as well. So self service there. So could you open up like a little bit? How do you currently like measure, analyze, and optimize your inbound acquisition efforts?
Yeah, we've been focusing a lot on attribution recently. I think that's at the core of a lot of analysis and measurement in terms of understanding the performance of marketing, different channels, different activities. It's hard. I think it's impossible to paint a perfect picture of what's happening in reality. I don't think you'll ever know truly what is happening, but your attribution model is your version of reality. And I think you need to take that with a pinch of salt, that this is just one way of looking at it. And I think even the model you choose is going to distort that reality as well. Whether you look at first touch, last touch, linear, weighted, and so forth, to understand the customer journey and the roles of different channels. So that I think is just a good thing to understand before you jump into this. But really it's about trying to just get an idea of how people find us, what path do they take, what touch points do they have with marketing, which channels are driving customers and revenue and so forth. And one of the challenges we have is that it's not just a website where you go to supermetrics.com and start a trial, but our product is distributed through many marketplaces, such as the old G Suite marketplace, which I think they updated the name to Google Workplace Marketplace like 2 weeks ago when they updated all the icons and no one can tell the difference between Gmail, Google Calendar, and so forth. But people find us through there. They find us through the Google Data Studio Gallery, the HubSpot app marketplace. So people are starting to use Supermetrics through many different paths, and it's very easy to never go to supermetrics.com and use our product, to find our product, start using it, and purchase. So that makes things a little more difficult to track. And I think instead of, as well as just looking at specific channels and attribution groups, you can also use it to analyze certain events or campaigns, not just channels, but it's really about baking it into your processes and making sure you look at numbers on certain cadences. So every day, just checking in to see how things went yesterday, seeing how our pacing is to quarterly goals. So we have our marketing overview dashboards built in Google Data Studio, where we can really track in real time our progress with forecasts. Like if we're maintaining this pace, we're going to hit this number, which is this percentage change relative to previous quarter, which is this sort of relative to our forecasted goal for this quarter. So looking at that, looking at things on a weekly level, getting a bit more granular there to understand what's been driving acquisition during the last week. Has there been any big changes, big swings? In particular, looking at key acquisition channels like the Google Workplace Marketplace. And then, of course, monthly performance. How are we doing as a business? How are we doing as a marketing team? And there are certain times when you also want to do your own ad hoc analysis about a specific event, or if you want to dig into something or figure out what's going on. And I'd say we lean quite heavily on our growth team here. So they're working a lot on our own internal reporting and analysis, and we work with them quite a bit when we have questions that need answering, or if we can't figure out an answer to a question we have, we'll most likely enlist their help. And they're super good and really, really great to work with. So there's kind of a lot going on. I just think it's important to make sure you build that into your processes and you don't just sort of move from task to task without checking the big picture and what's actually happening, and are we moving the needle, and where are we relative to budgets and forecasts and so forth. So there's a lot going on, but I think just build it into your processes, but also just be aware that the big picture and your reflection of reality is never going to be perfect. But it can help guide you, which is what it's all about at the end of the day.
Yeah, that sounds good. And Actually, one more question, since in the podcast that you are hosting, the Growth Hub, you are always having the Fast Five challenge with people. we are not doing the full five or Fast Five challenge here, but you are always asking about the most important growth metric. So if you should now choose one, what would it be for you guys?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I haven't had time to think specifically about this. And it's interesting because all answers that I get or we hear on the podcast are often very different. But to me, I think we look at revenue. That's what it's about at the end of the day. And trials won't pay your bills. MQLs won't pay your bills. SQLs, they don't pay your bills. It's revenue. That's what it's about at the end of the day. And that kind of indicates how quickly you're growing. And that's also what we look at as a company, like the year-on-year growth rate of revenue. So I think if I had to pick one, it would be that one.
Great choice. I agree with that one. And then you've been working for Supermetrics soon 2 years, and you've been like growing super rapidly on the 2 years, and you probably have learned a lot about growth and marketing. But if you personally would start again the journey that you have done in the past 2 years now in Supermetrics, what would you change? What would you do differently? What would you change focus on?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, you learn a huge amount in that space of time. And I think it's quite easy to say, oh, we should have done this, or we should have done that, or we definitely shouldn't have done that, or we should have done these things differently. I think for the most part, we did a pretty good job. But I think one thing we could have done is maybe experimented a bit more early on with different channels and tactics and thinking about events. We were pretty late to the webinar game. Kind of COVID definitely drove that, like it did with many companies, and we saw pretty good results. Of course, it's hard to say would we have seen those results pre-COVID, since everyone was at home anyway without much to do. But things like events, webinars, podcasts, there's a lot of things we didn't really do. So that could have been one thing to do differently. Try out things a little quicker. But then I think on the flip side, you do wear many hats as a marketer. Your days can be pretty hectic. You're trying to do so many different things, so many channels, so many tactics, so many new tools to play around with. So when you do that, you're also sacrificing focus when you're trying to test new content formats, channels. So there is always a trade-off there, but maybe that's something we could have done differently.
Great. And then we will hop on to our basically last two questions here. So our previous guest had a question for you, and then you have the chance to ask a question from our next guest. And last week I was discussing with Mikko from Grano, their sales and marketing director. And Mikko wanted to ask you that since you've been growing rapidly in the past years, what do you think are the biggest risk for your future growth in your internal work? So basically, you are not allowed to answer that something is changing on the market or so on, but basically in your internal work, what do you see as the biggest risk for your growth?
Yeah, I think internally, the most important thing is culture and making sure you maintain that culture you have, that you can scale culture over time as the company grows, scale that culture internationally. I think one of the biggest differences that I mentioned earlier on between when I started versus where we are now is that we all sat in the same room, literally, on my first day at Supermetrics. And now we're spread across 3 different offices, across 2 continents, multiple time zones. And culture has been key to growth at Supermetrics. I think it's been one of the factors why the company's been so successful. Having a very strong culture, bringing people who fit with that culture. And I think that's going to be one of the most important things going forward. And I think as well now, when everyone's fully remote, that adds another layer of complexity to things going forward. So I think if we just have to look internally, I think that's going to be one of the most important things to ensure that we're successful and keep growing the way we have done in the past.
Great answer. A good point for sure. And then we will move on to your questions, to our next guest. And if I remember correctly, this is kind of actually funny, since our next question will be to Olli Kuivalainen, professor of international marketing and entrepreneurship in LUT. And if I remember correctly, Olli used to teach you in some university, or was it so?
Yeah, kind of. So this is quite funny when I saw Olli's name. So when Olli was a visiting lecturer at the Helsinki School of Economics, I was studying at that time, and I was working as the international business program coordinator. So I was actually his assistant on one of his courses that he taught for his guest course on international marketing. This was back in the day. I think it must have been 2009, 10, like at least over 10 years ago. So yeah, funny how this worked out. So my question for Olli is, firstly, do you remember me? And second, I hope so. And secondly, I know the areas where Olli is working and researching. So I'd love to know, what are the success factors required for small Finnish B2B technology businesses to successfully expand internationally? So how does he see that? And what are the important things to keep in mind for Finnish companies to succeed internationally? Because I think that's super relevant and important to all small B2B tech companies here in Finland. That the local market is so small. So interested to hear what Olli says on that one.
Great question. I will ask that one from Olli next week. And thank you so much, Edward, for joining the show. Thank you for the listeners checking this one out. And if you like the episodes, feel free to share it on your social and tag me and Edward on that one as well. And have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.